I'd just like to acknowledge that where I am presenting from is Noongar land. And so the Noongar people are the indigenous people of the region that I am speaking from. And we acknowledge that the Noongar people remain the spiritual and cultural custodians of their land and continue to practice their values, languages, beliefs, and knowledge. We pay respect to the traditional owners of the lands on which we live and work across Western Australia and Australia. And so to give you an idea of what this beautiful land looks like, this is a shot of the campus of UWA where I work. And so I'm doing my part for the tourist board of Western Australia to show you what a beautiful place it is to work. This is the Swan River that we have here in Matilda Bay, and this is the campus. And this is the building that I'm speaking from at the moment. So it's a beautiful place. So if you're ever thinking of traveling this far, it is a long way. Please do come in and see Alex and I in Perth. We'll be delighted to host you. So I'm going to give an overview of different technologies that we have used to try to improve student learning in the laboratory. So there's three parts to this talk, as the title suggests. It's the pre-laboratory digital technologies. We've got the in-laboratory technologies, and we've also got post-laboratory technologies, because these are the places that we think that is, well, the three areas that we can actually get students to think about their laboratory before they come. They're going to be doing the laboratory as well. And also we're going to be providing some kind of assessment, which is normally in the post-laboratory area. So I'm going to be talking about these three areas. To give you some context about the results that you'll see later on, all research is conducted in this talk is based on results from students' responses to surveys and questionnaires that we've given to our first-year chemistry students in chemistry and biochemistry units. So we have 4 first-year units at UWA. The first 2, there's a physical-based unit and a synthetic-based unit. And these are the core units that we have in our chemistry major. And you can see that the number of students in this unit each semester are quite large. They can range between 200 and 400 or 150 and 300, depending on the flavor of the units. Our biochemistry unit, we have about 400 to 600 students each semester. And this is core in the biochemistry major. And we have a service unit, which I'm sure a lot of you have in your institutions, an introductory chemistry unit, a unit for students with no chemistry background. It's a service unit to a lot of different majors that require that, that high school level chemistry knowledge. So maybe like the general chemistry unit that you may have over in the States. And so in each of these units, we do have a extensive laboratory program. So there's 6 labs in our 2 core chemistry units. There's 4 laboratories in our biochemistry unit, and there are 6 laboratories in the introductory chemistry unit. And in fact, it's the laboratory component that is really what a lot of our colleagues in agriculture and environmental science really want students to have under their belt before they go into their laboratories, because they like the way that we train our students in these units before they get there. So the first part of the talk is about pre-laboratory activities, and there is a lot of literature out there about pre-laboratory activities. I've just taken you a sample of different screenshots of various articles that I have read and really guided me in what I've been thinking is important to look at when we're designing a pre-laboratory activity. There's a really good review article by Augustine and Siri that I really recommend, that if you want to get a grip about what is required in the pre-laboratory activities for chemistry education, that's a really good review. Then there's the work from colleagues over at Curtin, Morrow and David, and that was one of the first articles I read that really made me think about the use of online technologies as the pre-work before students go into their laboratories. And obviously, there's a lot of work being done by Stephen George Williams at the University of Sydney, who's done a lot of work in this area as well. We've also done some surveys with our students. We've looked at the feelings that students have had across their chemistry units. And so in this particular table here, we've got the pre-laboratory, at the start of the semester, so this is the pre, and the post-semester, so at the end of semester, we've surveyed students to see what they felt about their chemistry unit. So this is for intro chem students, so students with no chemistry background from high school. And we see that unfortunately, their excitement level goes down across semester. Their sense of worry goes up. They feel very overwhelmed by the experience, and their confidence diminishes. And we're particularly asking them about their laboratory experience. At the start, they were very excited about the laboratory. But as they continued through their semester, we see that there is this increase in this negative feelings, which is something that we wanted to probe. And so when I went to the literature and we decided to do something about it, the first thing we did was to put in those pre-laboratory videos and have an online quiz for them to complete based on the video that they watched. And so we embedded these videos into the LMS. It was watched by students. We knew we watched them because we could see the view counts. And then we did a similar survey in the following year once we've implemented it. It doesn't really do much to help their level of excitement still goes down. Their sense of worry, though, does go up, but it's not a significant difference between pre and post, whereas it was a significant difference in the previous year. The sense of being overwhelmed in the laboratory did go up significantly as well, which is something to look at. But also there was this reversal in the confidence that students felt having done the laboratory. So there's a lot of literature about reducing the cognitive load of students in the laboratory, which we've seen from other speakers. And so this is just a good way that we felt that this was a good method to pursue for future areas of good practice in our labs. Where we've moved on to is designing pre-laboratory video, which is using lightboard technology. And so lightboard is a piece of glass used as a whiteboard so that the audience can see the presenter. And let me just go back to this one. There you go. And so we've seen from Sebastian's talk actually has introduced already these different design principles from Mayer. The gaze-guide principle is a dynamic drawing principle, the signaling principle, and we can see that it removes the need to turn away from the audience, like we have in a whiteboard, which we had in our previous one here. You can see when I'm doing my whiteboard annotations, my back is towards the audience. But the use of these light boards are very good at allowing students to see the presenter, see their emotions, see what they are referring to. And we've done some surveys with students on this, and on these particular ones, we saw that they did agree that it's helped me develop their math skills, because we had a lot of calculations that would be important for the laboratory in these pre-lab videos. And so we thought that was a really great way to present the material. It's really great for reaction mechanisms as well, to describe the reaction mechanism. And so here's a nice quote that we had from one of our students about the way that it was being visualized to them. We use different colors to emphasize different parts of it. So in reaction mechanisms as well, we use different colors for the arrows, etc. It's a really great visual, and it's an engaging way of going to your students. So we've moved on to looking at 360 laboratory tours. And we did this for several reasons. One, we wanted to introduce the laboratory to students. So we would have in the LMS a pre-lab tour for students to do, a 360 lab tour. And over a period of 3 years, we surveyed the students, and it was based on their feedback and improvements. So based on their feedback, improvements were made. And so the types of feedback we got, and so we surveyed them over 3 different semesters, and we first got a sense of their prior experience. Okay, so whether or not they were new to chemistry or they had high school chemistry experience. And so we had these type of tours in all our first year chemistry labs. And we got the sense of how much they used it. And you can see that they used it a great deal. Okay, so they virtually went around all of it. And we asked them about how they've used the embedded videos or audios that we had. So over this period of different iterations, we made improvements on the actual design of the 360 lab tour. This is a nice quote that we had that I would allow you to read as I explain these different types of feedback that we got. So in one of the first iterations we had it starting off in the lab, which was in this one here. And you can see that they said that they navigated to the technicians base, and some of them made it to the ground floor, etc. And then we asked them to actually navigate from the ground floor of the building and actually orientate them to get to the laboratory. And so we wanted to see how students did that and whether they did that. And so the majority of students made their way from the ground floor all the way up to their first year laboratories using this particular tour, which was really good to see them use. That was the intention of getting them to orientate themselves before they come into the laboratory. What is incredibly impactful is to aid in their familiarization and in their preparation for the laboratory, which was great for them to see as well. And so now we know that this tour was very good for familiarization and preparation. One area that we're really interested in is in self-efficacy. So this is the ability for students to think that they are able to achieve a task. And we've got a nice validated survey that we can use. And so these first 5 questions are from the validated survey in this article from 2009. And I will say that this work was done by Ryan Lopez, a PhD student of mine who's just submitted his PhD, where he's looked at the design of these 360 lab tours and how it does affect students' attitudes towards chemistry and also self-efficacy within the laboratory. I'm going to focus on the self-efficacy side. We've got one extra question in there because when we've done research to ask students what they are most anxious about or have less self-efficacy about, it's about the time that they could take to complete the laboratory. So we added an extra question into this survey. We did a data collection over 3 different time periods in a semester. And so for our intro chem students, we did a survey in the very first lecture. We did the survey at the start of their lab class, once they were introduced, once they had a time to do their 360 lab tour, and at the very end of semester, okay, 12 weeks after they've done the first one. So the good news for us is that between the start of the semester and the end of semester, simply if students completing the laboratory, they felt increase in self-efficacy. Okay, and so from that large pool of data that we collected, we were able to get 67 of them as paired data. So we were able to do a paired t-test, and there was a significant increase for all survey responses from survey 1 to survey 3. What we then asked is whether or not, and this is between the responses from survey 1 to survey 2, which is when they hadn't completed their laboratory, okay? We did a 360 lab tour, asked them, did they use it? And we see that we had 42 students said that they did the 360 lab tour, and 36 said to them that they didn't use the tour. And what we found interesting was that there was no significant difference between their responses to survey 1 to survey 2. So that means if they didn't see any increase, or in fact there was even a slight decrease in how confident they were in performing the laboratory task before they had done anything. So the impact of the virtual lab tour, when it's just like a summary of your environment, doesn't actually help in those on those key questions that we were probing. So what Ryan did is what he designed another lab tour, and in fact, if I go to here, hopefully you can see this. Is my screen still shared?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So yeah, as you see, what we did is that we had a lab tour which started off again from the base of the building. There were definitely more parts of the building that you could explore. This is our beautiful Baylis building, some Penrose tilings on the bottom, for those of you who knows what that is. We've got a DNA molecule running up the side. And when we actually got them into the lab, there's lots of photos that he took. When we got them into the lab, they could walk around the different parts of the lab, see much more for it. There was far more areas for them to explore, like the analytical lab, far more information for them. But the key thing is that we particularly targeted a particular experiment that they would use and looked at the equipment and how it was set up. And so we decided that we wanted to now, I'll go back to my slides. We wanted to see the impact of this particular tour and what that had with students. And so this particular tour, we saw that 40 students said that they used it, and there was a significant increase in their responses when we asked them to say how confident they were or how well they thought that they had to complete a particular task. So that was really great to see. And those that didn't do it, we've only got 11 students that we could pair the data to. And so it is a slight decrease still, but not a significant decrease. But interesting to know, if you design a digital technology, it's really got to suit the purpose of which you want it to do. If you want them to get more confident in use and familiarization with equipment, you need to integrate that into the design of the online thing that you were working towards. So that was really great work done by Ryan during his PhD. So that's everything I want to say about pre-laboratory work. During the lab is tricky because there are safety concerns about, and I'm always concerned about, the use of devices in the laboratory. There's one particular comment, I think, for a previous discussion about the cognitive load within a lab. You always do need to take care of that. But we've trialed two different approaches. One is the use of QR codes and gamification to improve student learning. That was one thing. And one, we've used augmented reality, which Sebastian talked about before, and we'll tell you what we've done in that space. So the QR codes and gamification was that we had this Show Zap Pat project, and this was led by Shannon Macy, a former colleague of mine that's now doing great work at the University of New South Wales. And the show was that students would show a practical skill to the demonstrator or the teaching assistant during the experiment. If we thought that the student required some additional resources to help them develop knowledge or develop that practical skill, we'd put a QR code in their lab manual, and the students, when they got home, could zap the QR code and get an online resource specific to what we want them to develop and to look at. And then a pat on the back was we had this online, in the LMS, we had this set of proficiencies that student needed to achieve to obtain these badges. And so the baseline evaluation is what we did when we had just the normal way that we ran our particular synthetic units. This is the synthetic unit that we run at UWA. Now, students in this laboratory, in this unit, do a recrystallization at least 3 times. They get the opportunity to do it. We asked them, without any intervention, at the end of semester, what makes a recrystallization successful? And then we looked at their responses, and we basically said that if they mentioned anything about purification, we gave them a correct answer. If they mentioned anything else, then it was incorrect. We wanted them to put on the purification or something about purification in their answer. Now you can see that, what's that, 76% of students didn't put an answer that we felt reflected what we hoped that they would have learnt by doing their laboratory. And so we implemented these QR codes. So the QR codes sent them to these different types of videos that they could watch to help improve on their technique. And also these are the online badges that we implemented. So they could gain a gold, a silver, or a bronze. And so it's like these different levels that they needed to achieve to get from one level to the next. This is where students would see based on the demonstrator. And we did have to train the demonstrators quite a lot in this area in order to be able to know when to give the stickers to the students and also know when to assess their practical skills. And so then we did the same kind of diagnostic test that we got students to complete in semester 1. And this time we did it when we were going to implement the change to the intervention in the semester 2 round. So it's exactly the same unit, it's just we run it twice a year because of the large student numbers. And so we did a pre-test and a post-test. And so these are the response rates that we've got from our different surveys. And so you can see here the orange bars are the baseline that I showed you before. You can see at the start of semester 2, there's pretty much the same knowledge as students had from when they completed the lab course from semester 1. But you see, because of the interventions that we put in, we see a drastic increase in students that gave a correct answer for what makes a recrystallization successful. So we felt that that was a win. It's still not over half the class, which is something to be concerned about, but it still shows that there's a significant increase between students getting the right answer about why we're making them do this practical in their class and what the purpose of it is. So onto this has already been talked about, the augmented reality. What we can do with that is look at the macroscopic and trying to link that to what's happening in the laboratory to the microscopic level. So we had an experiment where we got students to extract DNA to aggregate, DNA so that they could see it. And so we developed a little augmented reality app to go alongside this experiment for students to do. So we wanted to bridge the gap between these two areas of viewpoints that we think are important in chemistry. And so we developed this app that students can do. And basically it went through on a molecular scale what was happening inside their test tube. And so we could get data to the number of installations that students did. And remember that this is the biochemistry unit, and since there had a large number of students in there, we weren't getting the number of installations that we felt that was required. We couldn't force them to do it. It wasn't part of the assessment. We just said if you felt willing and you wanted to, you could download this particular app to help in your thing. And when we asked them for student response about when they would use it, a lot of students wanted to use this particular app after the laboratory. Okay, so that's what, and they actually wanted to use it in preparation for, so because there was parts of the course which dealt with the structure of DNA, etc. And we went through in that about how DNA is constructed and its structure. They actually wanted to use it in that thing. So again, it's about thinking about when you think a online technology would be used and when it's more useful for students. And sometimes you need that feedback from students to understand when it's a good point for them to use the resource. On the post-laboratory side of things, we've been using a company known as LearnSci that some of you will know about. We've been using their online worksheets since about 2018. And we used to have online worksheet. Well, we used to have in-laboratory worksheets where students would complete the assessments, okay, in the laboratory while they're completing this the practical class, and have to hand in that laboratory sheet, and that would get graded. And students felt they were rushed. I think that leads to their sense of being overwhelmed. They were telling me that it feels like an exam in the laboratory. And so what we did was we basically digitalized that online worksheet. And so the work I'm going to present here is actually research that's been conducted by Emily and Leanne, who are part of the LearnSci team, who did surveys to students about the worksheets that they were using. So this is what a smart worksheet looks like. You can see that students would put in a response and then they would get feedback on their answer. And so this is one of the reasons that we really turned to these smart worksheets, is because students could get timely and effective feedback. Timely because it was being done as they were inputting their answer, and the feedback was effective because it actually helped them to answer more questions as they went along based on that feedback. It also removed the inconsistencies we have between demonstrators marking between different classes, because it was all automatically marked. So we designed these worksheets so they could be all completely automatically marked, and we did them. We gave them a 2-day period for them to complete the labs, so that they removed that feeling of that they were being tested and examined inside the lab and not actually learning any lab skills. And anecdotally, the lab demonstrators or the teaching assistants that have helped teach in these labs have told us that they're finding students paying more attention on their practical work rather than the assessment item linked to the practical work, based on taking that assessment out of the lab and putting it on an online format for them. And so these surveys have been conducted by LearnSci, and this is just some research that they've been doing. So some of them are using them as a revision tool as well. Most of them are using them as the lab assessments. That's what we asked them for. Okay. And so that was really great to see that they were using them, and they would do, because it's their thing. What's really interesting is to look at these particular ones here about how much do you agree that smart worksheets helped you to provide effective feedback, support the development of data handling, quickly correct mistakes and misunderstandings using the rapid feedback. So this is really why we turn to them for this resource. And we can see that a lot of the students strongly agree or agree with the implementation of these worksheets. So how much would they recommend these smart worksheets to other students in similar courses? You see there's a big approval rating here. And I really liked that they asked them to have these open-ended questions. You can see some of the comments that are being made by students. So they drew attention to the quality of the feedback available. And this is very nice, because when you work with a company like LearnSci, it's actually my feedback that I've written down and feedback that colleagues have written down that they want students to have. And so that was really nice to see. And I think that the timeliness of it is really important as well. And the ability to set them at their own pace as they proceeded. So that was really great to see. Not all of the comments were favorable, so it's good to see what students disliked about those various worksheets. And so they got very annoyed when we got them to round their answer. There was a big reduction in the mark that we gave them if they got it incorrectly. But I always like to think that significant figures are significant, and you should pay attention to them. That's why it's in the word significant figures. And so we did do a little bit of repair work on that to not reduce the entirety of the mark being lost at that point. And so, yeah, just a different way of assessing, and it was a costly way for us to assess students as well, which is always good for us. So in conclusions, I think I'm hopefully on time. and there's time for questions later on, that these technologies are very good at helping students work in the affective domain and also the cognitive domain. I'm really interested to know why students don't use particular technologies that we spend so much time and effort into providing for them and telling them that it's in their interest to use. It seems to be that they want the incentive of marks to be associated with the use of that technology in order for them to use them. And so that's where I think that would be nice to investigate into the future. So just to thank this whole host of people here I've worked with at UWA over the years on different projects in chemical education. Ryan Lopez is his PhD that's done all the work on the 360 lab tours. Team Lightboard, these group here, they did a lot of work in designing and implementing those pre-lab using the lightboards. It's been really great to see. It's been great to work with LearnSci over the years, particularly Emily and Leanne, to design those worksheets. We get very tiny but very effective and well-used funding from internal funds to develop these education projects. And I thank you all for your attention. Thank you.